Hi everyone, so here's now a brief demonstration of how you can assign and change the instrument that is assigned to a MIDI or a software instrument track in Logic. As mentioned in the MIDI history in the MIDI specification informational module, it talked about how MIDI messages are not audio, they're not actual sound. You will hear some sound once an instrument receives MIDI messages, basically telling it what notes to play, but the MIDI message itself is not actually audio. It's just play this note, now play this note, now play this note. So one of the big advantages of that in a MIDI track in a DAW is that you're able to change an instrument anytime you want, really, from what it was originally maybe intended. Maybe I intended or I originally recorded something as a piano sound, but I can at any point change that to whatever instrument I want. Maybe make it a trumpet or a timpani or something. I can completely change that at the press of a button, which is not something I can do with recorded audio. I can't record a singer, a female singer, and suddenly say, I want that to be a trumpet. I can't just change it that way. But because MIDI information is, again, just telling you what notes to play, you can easily change that. So I've brought up the project. This is what the project we're doing for the track that we're doing for the next project called Higher Ground. It's a Stevie Wonder song. It's a general MIDI file, so I just found it on the internet. It had all the parts. Someone took the time to kind of create all the different parts. And when you first import in a general MIDI file, it probably will assign instruments based on what the file originally said to play. So in this case, you can see the track names are clavichord, bass, electric, piano, tenor sax, mute electric, and drums. So if I just loaded this up from downloading from the internet, it would probably assign those instruments pretty well if they're available in your DAW. I've changed it already though. I've made them all piano sounds so that for the purpose of this assignment, you're going to go in and actually change them to whatever you want. So if we just hear this, it comes in with a little 4 ticks on a hi-hat for kind of a get ready, set, go type of thing. So every track we're hearing right now is, again, all assigned to a piano sound, even though you notice the tracks have the original names of what they were. I went in and reassigned them as a piano sound. So one thing I can easily do is say this chord or track was originally a clavichord. If I want to hear that as a clavichord, I just need to assign that. The easiest way to assign instruments in Logic is to go to the library, which is the very first button in the upper left corner. That opens up an overall library of preset sounds. Now, it can be a little confusing when you're talking about instruments and sounds because they kind of seem the same, but they're not really. What happens when you use this library is you're basically choosing a sound. Now, that sound may be the name of an instrument, like clavichord, but it's not, as far as the software is thinking, you're bringing up a preset sound. Some instrument is going to play that. Now that could be like a sampler, it could be a synthesizer, it could be some instrument that's going to play the sound that happens to be called clavichord. So it can be a little confusing. So when you choose an actual sound in the library in Logic, you're choosing not only the sound of an instrument, but it's also going to load up various effects as well. So it does it all automatically. I do have a way to search for stuff, so if I'm looking for something in particular, maybe I'm looking for a violin and I'm not sure where I can find it, what category, I could just type that in. So in other words, I could just type clavichord or clav as it's usually abbreviated, and I'll see a whole list of stuff, especially at the beginning, like 70s funk clav, ambient funk clav. So I've got different ones. I've got clav Ottawa, and if I want to assign these, I just click on it. It reassign that track. You can see how the icon changed. But more importantly, if I solo this track, I can actually hear that particular sound suddenly. And that's more what the original track sounded like in the 1970s. They used a clavichord instrument with this. But even while it's playing, I can change these sounds. So I'm going to play, and I'm just going to click a few of these to hear how the sound will load up and change to whatever I click on. But those are all just different clavichords. So I can click the X button to basically get out of that search, and I could just say I'm going to scroll back to the left. I can do that from the bottom. Here's a little scroll bar. But I can change that to anything. Maybe I want that to be, go into world music, and let's see, we've got maybe woodwinds. I've got a Chinese Zhao flute. So let's hear this. Oh, in this case, it's too low for the instrument. I'd have to transpose it to do it, because these are kind of high-pitch instruments. See if any of these will work. I think they're all going to be probably too low for that particular one. Let's just change it to a polka accordion. So again, all I had to do was click and I could choose that sound. So maybe I wanted to make it real synthy sounding. I go and, oh, I want that to be it's kind of a bassish sound. It's kind of low in the range, so I might want to use like a synth bass. And so let's see what Metro bass sounds like. Okay, so you just kind of choose whatever you want. For the purposes of the assignment, you'll want to find an instrument that kind of fits within the range of that instrument. In other words, for the bass line, you don't want to assign that to be a flute, a high-pitch instrument. You want to assign that to be some bass instrument, but it doesn't have to be bass guitar. It could be a synth bass. It could be, you know, an upright double bass. It could be whatever you want. Electric piano, you just have to listen to what's the range and what might be good. This is playing lots of chords, so probably choosing an instrument that can only play one note at a time wouldn't make sense. Tenor saxophone is only going to play one note at a time, so that's kind of the lead melody that they put it in for this MIDI track. And then, of course, muted electric is talking about muted electric guitar. So sure, a guitar sound will work, but you could also be really creative and choose something completely not that. For the purpose of the project, the only track that you have to kind of keep it within the realm of what it is the actual drum track here. This is a 70s kit is what's assigned to it by default, which makes sense. This is a 70s song. But there's nothing that stops me from saying, well, what about an electronic drum set? One of these, like, let's see what the Euro Dance remix sounds like. Okay, so just a totally different sounding set that I can assign. So for the purpose of the project, it just needs to be some type of drum set. In other words, don't assign a piano to the drums. It's got to be some type of drums. But all the rest should just be whatever instrument that you think sounds good within this piece. And that's really kind of all you have to do, other than also you'll probably need to bring up the mixer. I use the keyboard shortcut, which was the X key, but you can also click this button up near the top left area that if you point to it, it says mixer, but it has these lines. It looks like little fader things. So I can bring that up so that as you're kind of changing sounds, you may say, well, that sounds too loud. It was way louder than the other, so you might want to adjust the volume levels for whatever one you want. And you can, of course, also pan things left or right if you wanted to sound a little bit more interesting in the stereo field too. Okay, so that's it. Have fun choosing sounds for that.